Hello and welcome to this episode of Hospitality Talks. I'm absolutely delighted to have Yasha Estraikh with me, who is Associate Partner at Piper, specialising in brands. Yasha, thank you so much for joining us. I'm very much looking forward to getting your perspective today. Just for anyone out there who doesn't know who Piper are or hasn't sort of come across you guys in the past, do you just want to explain who you are and who Piper are?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. As Katy mentioned, my name is Yasha. I spent 10 years at Piper, but Piper's history actually goes back 35 years to when Piper actually used to be a brand strategy consultancy. So that's really where our love of brands comes from. And then the founders of Piper then started Picture and Piano, launched that as founders, grew that and sold that to Marston's at the back end of the 90s. And really Piper was born out of their experience of growing Picture and Piano, which was that the investment community didn't really understand brands and probably not as much how to work with founders. And so really the mantra of Piper was, we only invest in brands, and we don't only do hospitality, we do fast growing kind of digital businesses. We go everything from pet food through to jewelry and flowers, but it's really about the brand of the customer at the heart of that business, and working with those, obviously taking a stake in the business, but working with those founders over 5 years to help build what we call brand legends. And these are brands that are amazing at engaging with their community and will hopefully live on for decades beyond our investment with them.
Absolutely, and that putting brands at the heart of what you do, I think, is so important, because brands do have independent identities, and sometimes that is what makes them successful. And therefore, if you remove that, then you remove the chance of success. Yasha, tell me, the idea of brands and the hospitality industry in general has been had a little bit of a shake-up over the last 18 months. What does that mean from an investment standpoint?
Yeah, it's a good question. With site-based businesses, I think the concept of brand is slightly different to perhaps a digital business. Obviously, with a digital business, there's a website, and you almost don't notice it as much in the world. Mm-hmm. With site-based businesses, it's quite easy to become a chain quite quickly. And even though I think still most people like the idea of recognizing a brand and be able to get a particular experience in it, I think the notion of having a very kind of cookie cutter approach to brand building has changed, and I think will continue to evolve. Mm-hmm. And so from our perspective, I think there's a really, where we're constantly trying to have that trade-off of building a recognizable brand that's known for something, that stands for something, that has a strong purpose, but also having an experience in each site which is different and unique and encourages people to experience it in different ways.
I think it's also incredibly interesting that in times of trouble or in times of economic unrest, should we say, we know that the British consumer tends to go back to brands. They tend to go back to that idea of, this is someone that I trust, something that I know, and sticking with that. So let's talk a little bit about that investing in hospitality. What do investors look for? What are they on the lookout for when they're looking to put money into a brand?
Yeah. So I think all investors, whether it be us or anywhere else, will look at scalability and growth. We at Piper have a special, relationship with brand, and so we, I think, probably look a lot more at, how well they engage with their community, their ability to have, a really strong social following, the empathy around their brand, all of those things, the kind of softer things which are a bit less tangible. But all investors will look at, how do you grow this business? Mm-hmm. And I think there's been a real fundamental change in that over the last 5 years, even before COVID. I think COVID has just kind of accelerated it. The idea that you can have 150, 200 sites used to be very prevalent. Everyone used to talk about that. I think the reality these days is to do that is really tough in the UK. There are brands that can do it, I'm thinking about what our previous investments, lounges.
Yeah.
I don't exactly remember how many they're up to now, but probably 170 plus, and we proved there could be 500 plus for them. So brands like that are really unique in that they show real scalability. They can engage in really quite small communities and do great numbers. But in the more casual dining space, you've got to be really mindful and smart in how you grow brands. And so, for us as investors, we're now thinking about online delivery as part of that growth. We're thinking about different site models. It's not just about city center. Do you have a kind of a neighborhood model? And even the likes of Preton are doing that, right? So I think everybody's thinking in that way. So being smarter at growing is really, really important. I think as investors, I think what COVID has helped with is some of the fundamentals around rent rates, which clearly will make the business model easier and perhaps allow businesses to open in locations where it wouldn't have worked previously because the rent rates wouldn't have added up.
Yeah.
Labor obviously is going up the other end, probably
Yeah.
doesn't help. So those are really important. I think the other thing that we as investors always think about is exit, which is who do we sell the business to?
Mm-hmm.
And so we think about that before we even invest. In our investment paper, we'll have a heading which is exit, and it's not always obvious. In 5 years, which is how long we stay in businesses, is a lifetime in the world of brands. So anything can change. But I think it's really important for us to understand how do we return the money to our investors.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in hospitality, that has been a bit challenging in the last few years, but actually I think is becoming much more interesting. So as you've seen in the news, likes of tortilla floating on AIM, I think is really helpful as an avenue for for investors to get their returns. There are going to be interesting groups being created, casual dining groups, hospitality groups being created as well. And I think that will once again be very helpful.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I wonder what are the brands that are more challenging to work with, not specifically by name, but what type of hospitality brands would investors possibly struggle to take on board and to assist?
So at Piper, I think we are naturally more attracted to brands that have different occasions.
Okay.
So a broader range of occasions, because then it opens up the number of places it can work. Interestingly, at Piper, we talk about the sector not as hospitality anymore, but as socializing.
Okay.
Just as a different way of spinning it. And so I think naturally, I think where we struggle a little bit more are narrower brands that just do lunchtime eating, for example. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because I think just the requirement for them to be for the high footfall locations and where people work. This is even before COVID. It's even more challenging post-COVID. It's always been quite hard for us to get our head around, and I think those brands have kind of had to push themselves internationally much quicker to be able to deal with demands of growth. But brands, we love all day brands that can do all day from breakfast to all the way through dinner. I think those brands will have more room for growth.
Okay. And then just finally then, Yasha, we all know that investment brings cash into a business. That's very obvious. But what else do you bring to the party? What else can you help, whether it's founders or people that are working within the business? What else do you help with?
So I would say, whether it be hospitality business or any of our businesses that we invest in, the number one thing that the business needs to invest in is people. And obviously with hospitality, there's a really big kind of fragmented employee base. So it's really important to create a really strong culture to be able to bind all these people that are spread hundreds of miles apart. That you know, as you grow is fundamental. And obviously that culture comes from the top. And so building out a senior leadership team that can not only operationally manage the growth of the business really well,
Yeah.
so opening, you know, lots of new sites every year whilst making sure that the other ones are running really well, but also maintaining that culture is so important. And so as investors, what we spend a lot of our time doing is helping them build out that team,
Mm-hmm.
the best team that can handle the next stage of growth.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about Piper as kind of, this is a Piper way of talking about growth, 7, 17, and 70. And so whether it be at kind of 7 million, 17 million, or 70 million turnover, or 7 sites, 17 sites, 70 sites, those are the kind of natural inflection points when businesses change.
Okay.
And we're very mindful of those. And it's scary, you know, if you speak to businesses, how accurate it is. The businesses, before you hit those inflection points, need to change. The same people that grow it to you know, 17 million might not be the ones that grow to 17 million. The processes, the technology, the leadership, culture, everything needs to be stepped up again. And so we help them transition through those inflection points.
Brilliant. Well, there's been a lot of change in the industry in the last 18 months, and as you say, even before that. And I think that, you know, COVID has shaken up how we look at brands. It has shaken up how we look at investment and what people want to do going forward with their brands. Thank you so much for spending the time to talk to me, because investment is something that I know that a lot of people watching out there are interested in. And possibly just getting some pointers from you will have helped them decide what they want to do next with their brand. So thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome. I just want to say on kind of end on a very, very positive note, I think, you know, we're still excited about the sector. And I think there's going to be some amazing innovation coming through. If anything, what I see as a result of challenges like COVID or Brexit is that, you know, founders step up to the mark and create something really special.
I absolutely agree with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.